No one showed up to my software engineering graduation. My dad said that kind of thing was meant for boys, not girls. 2 weeks later, when I landed a great job at a major tech company, my mom told me my sister needed help finding one too. I replied, "Actually, my office is hiring, just not for her." That Saturday morning in May, the auditorium was full of families. Parents held flowers, siblings waved balloons, and laughter echoed through the hall. I sat alone in my folding chair, adjusting my graduation cap for what felt like the 100th time. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no messages, nothing. I had sent my family the invitation 3 months earlier, and even called twice to remind them. The first time, my dad laughed and said I was wasting money on a degree that would never pay off. My mom didn't laugh. She just stayed quiet. But her silence carried the same message. My sister Veronica rolled her eyes when I mentioned it at our last family dinner. To them, software engineering wasn't a real achievement. In their eyes, I didn't belong in technology at all. I walked across that stage alone, shook, hands with the dean alone, accepted my diploma, and smiled for the photographer, alone. Family next to me invited me to join their celebration lunch, but I politely declined. I drove back to my small apartment in Seattle, opened a box of Chinese takeout, and scrolled through photos of my classmates celebrating with their proud families. That night, I realized something had to change. I was 26 years old and still chasing approval from people who refused to acknowledge me. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn their respect, and it had led nowhere. My father ran a successful construction company in Portland and often reminded us that technical work was beneath our family's image. My mother, a longtime real estate agent, had raised us to value appearances and social connections over substance. Veronica had followed their example perfectly. She'd studied business administration, barely passing, and worked briefly in marketing before being fired for constant tardiness. Since then, she'd lived at home, drifting between short-term jobs that never lasted more than a few weeks. My parents treated her failures as temporary setbacks, while seeing my accomplishments as accidents or luck. I had always been the odd one out, the daughter who preferred computers over cocktail parties. At 14, I started teaching myself to code through library books and free online tutorials. I worked 3 part-time jobs to pay for community college before transferring to a university on a partial scholarship. After years of effort, I graduated with honors and received an offer from Cloud Tech Systems, one of the largest cloud infrastructure companies in the world. The offer letter came 2 days before graduation. Senior Technical Implementation Specialist, $85,000 a year plus benefits and a $10,000 signing bonus. I cried when I read it, then immediately called my parents to share the news. My father was in a meeting. My mother said, "That's nice," then asked if I could help Veronica update her resume. When Veronica got on the phone, she complained about how tough the job market was. No one congratulated me. No one asked what my position involved, or how I'd achieved it. I should have known better than to expect anything different. That following Monday, I began my new job at Cloud Tech Systems. The company occupied 12 floors of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. My team worked on the 8th floor, designing and implementing custom cloud solutions for enterprise clients. My manager, Patricia, a brilliant and encouraging woman, welcomed me warmly. My colleagues invited me to lunch and actually listened when I spoke. For the first time in my life, I felt seen for my abilities instead of judged for my choices. 2 weeks into the job, my phone rang during lunch. It was my mother. I almost ignored the call. But curiosity made me answer. Her tone was light, overly cheerful. She asked how I was adjusting to my new position and mentioned how she'd been telling her friends about my impressive company. Then she casually brought up that Veronica was still job hunting and wondered if Cloud Tech might have any openings. A chill ran through me. They had ignored my graduation. They had dismissed my success, and now they wanted a favor. I told my mother that the company was indeed hiring. I could hear her excitement rising over the phone. Then I added that the available positions required specific technical skills and experience, qualifications. Veronica didn't have. Her tone changed immediately. She insisted that I could put in a good word, that family should help family, that Veronica just needed a chance. I thought about the empty chair at my graduation, about the years of subtle put-downs and eye rolls, about every moment they made me feel small. I told my mother I'd see what I could do, then ended the call. In truth, I had no intention of helping Veronica get a job at Cloud Tech. She lacked technical knowledge, relevant experience, and any sign of work ethic. More than that, she had never supported me, believed in me, or shown up when it mattered. But I didn't tell my mother that, not yet. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide how I wanted to handle it. Over the next few days, my mother called 3 more times. Veronica texted, asking about the application process. Even my father left a voicemail, saying it would be good for me to help my sister and that family connections mattered in business. Their sudden interest in my career might have felt meaningful if it hadn't been so clearly self-serving. Instead of engaging, I focused on work. Patricia had assigned me to a major implementation project for a national pharmaceutical company. They wanted to move their entire data infrastructure to the cloud within 6 months. It was complex, high pressure, and exactly the kind of challenge I thrived on. I gave it everything I had, working late, analyzing their existing systems, mapping migration strategies, and assessing risks. I attended meetings with executives who valued my input and treated me with respect. That's when I realized I was not only skilled technically, but also good at translating complex ideas into clear, practical terms for non-technical people, Patricia noticed. After one particularly successful client presentation, she pulled me aside. She told me I had a real future at Cloud Tech. She said the company valued employees who could bridge the gap between technology and business. She mentioned that leadership potential was something they always looked for. Those words meant more to me than any praise my family had ever given. 3 weeks later, I finally called my mother back. She answered on the first ring, clearly waiting for news about Veronica. I told her I had spoken with human resources about openings. That was technically true. I had casually asked our recruiter about entry-level requirements. My mother wanted to know what positions were available. I explained that most roles required either a technical degree or significant industry experience, things Veronica didn't have. She suggested Veronica could start in an administrative position and work her way up. I explained that even administrative roles at Cloud Tech required specific qualifications and went through a competitive hiring process. The conversation grew tense. My mother accused me of being difficult. She said I was letting my education make me arrogant. She said successful people help their families, not hide behind excuses. I felt my jaw tighten and that familiar frustration rise, but I kept my voice steady. I told her Veronica was welcome to apply through the standard process. I gave her the company's website and explained that HR carefully reviewed every application. I ended the call. Before she could argue any further, Veronica submitted her application the next day. I knew because she sent me a screenshot of the confirmation email, along with a message asking when she should expect to hear back. I didn't reply. I hadn't lied to my mother. Veronica could apply. Human resources would review her resume like they did with everyone else. They'd see her lack of relevant experience and reject her, just as they did with hundreds of other unqualified applicants each week. I hadn't sabotaged her. I had simply refused to give her an unfair advantage. There was a difference, though I doubted my family would see it that way. 4 days later, Veronica received the rejection email. A standard response, polite but direct. No openings matching her qualifications, though her resume would be kept on file for future opportunities. She forwarded it to me, adding 3 angry paragraphs about how I had clearly not helped her at all. That evening, my mother called. Her voice was cold, heavy with disappointment. She said she had expected more from me. That family was supposed to look out for each other. Veronica was struggling, and I could have changed everything with one phone call. I listened quietly, not interrupting once, feeling nothing but a strange sense of relief. When she finished, I told her I had done exactly what I promised. Veronica applied, HR reviewed her application, and the outcome was based entirely on her own qualifications, not my intervention. My mother called me selfish. I said I was being professional. She hung up. I set my phone down and went back to my project documentation, feeling lighter somehow, as if refusing to play their game had lifted a weight I'd carried for years. They wanted me to use my position for their benefit without ever acknowledging how hard I'd worked to get there. They wanted to share in my success without respecting the effort that built it. I was done chasing their approval. Done trying to earn their pride? I had built something of my own, and they couldn't claim it just because we shared DNA. The pharmaceutical project consumed the next 2 months. I worked 60-hour weeks coordinating with developers, database administrators, and network engineers. I learned more in those 8 weeks than I had in 4 years of university. Patricia began giving me more responsibility, leading client meetings, making technical decisions that influenced millions of dollars in infrastructure. The client loved our work. Their chief technology officer, a sharp and decisive woman named Diane, specifically praised my project management and communication skills. She told Patricia I was the reason they felt confident in the migration. Patricia passed the compliment along with a knowing smile, saying I was exceeding every expectation for someone so early in their career. My parents didn't call during that time. Veronica stopped texting. The silence was both freeing and unsettling. I had built so much of my identity around earning their approval that now, without that pursuit, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to be. My coworkers became my new circle. Patricia became a mentor of sorts. I started shaping a life that had nothing to do with my family. Then in late July, everything changed. Patricia called me into her office one Thursday afternoon. She was smiling, which usually meant good news. She asked me to close the door and take a seat. My heart raced. Was I being promoted? Assigned to a larger project? Maybe even getting a raise after only 3 months? Patricia explained that the pharmaceutical project had been a major success. The client was so pleased that they had referred cloud tech to several companies in their network. 3 new enterprise contracts had come directly from our work. The executive team had noticed and wanted to acknowledge the people responsible. I waited, trying to contain my excitement. Patricia told me they were creating a new position, Director of Enterprise Implementation. The role would oversee all major client projects, lead a team of implementation specialists, and report directly to the Vice President of Operations. The salary was $135,000, plus equity and bonuses. They wanted someone who could bridge both the technical and business sides, someone capable of leading. They wanted me. I sat there frozen, convinced I had misheard. Director, after only 3 months at age 26? Patricia laughed at my stunned expression and confirmed they were completely serious. She said I had demonstrated strong leadership handling complex projects and high-profile clients. She explained that the executives had thoroughly reviewed my work and had unanimously agreed I was the right choice. Patricia added that she had personally advocated for me because she believed in my potential. The promotion was effective immediately. Over the next month, I would transition into my new role, hiring my own team and taking over existing projects. With Patricia's full support during the adjustment, she shook my hand and welcomed me to leadership. I walked out of her office in a daze. Back at my desk, I stared blankly at my computer screen, barely processing what had just happened. I had worked for years, expecting only small, gradual progress, and now I was a director. I was earning more than double what I thought possible at this stage in my career. I was leading teams, influencing strategy, and shaping outcomes. I had achieved a level of success my family had never imagined for me. My first instinct was to call my parents, to share the news, to finally receive the recognition I had always wanted. But I stopped myself. They had already made their feelings clear. They had dismissed my graduation, ignored my first job offer, and only ever reached out when it benefited them. Why would this time be any different? Instead, I called my college roommate, Julia, who screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Then I called my favorite professor, who congratulated me and said he had always known I would accomplish remarkable things. I texted my coworkers, who insisted on taking me out to dinner to celebrate. That night, sitting in a restaurant surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my success, I realized something important. I had spent years chasing validation from the wrong people. My family was never going to give me what I needed because they never valued what I could do. They wanted me to fit into their world. And when I didn't, they shut me out. But I had built my own world. I had found people who saw my worth. I had created something meaningful, valuable, and entirely mine. The emptiness I had felt at graduation was gone. replaced by something solid: pride, confidence, and self-respect. I no longer needed my family's approval because I had finally earned my own. 2 weeks into my new position, my mother called. I was in a meeting, so I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She called again the next day, and again the day after that. Eventually, I answered during my lunch break. Her voice sounded different, uncertain. She said she had heard from a friend whose daughter worked at Cloud Tech that I had received a big promotion. She said she was calling to congratulate me, that she was proud of me. But her words felt empty, polite, rehearsed, and far too late. I thanked her courteously but didn't elaborate. I didn't mention my new team, my salary, or the responsibilities that came with the role. I kept the conversation brief and professional. She tried to continue, asking about my company and daily work. I offered short, vague responses. Then she brought up Veronica again, my sister. She said Veronica was still looking for opportunities and suggested that now that I was in a leadership role, maybe I could help. She ended by saying, "Having a director in the family means we should all benefit." There it was, the real reason behind the call. They weren't interested in my promotion. They cared only about what it could do for them. Anger flared within me, sharp and immediate, but beneath it was something steadier: determination. They wanted to use me, to benefit from my success without ever recognizing my worth. They wanted me to hand my sister opportunities she hadn't earned. I told my mother I'd think about it. The lie came easily now. I had no intention of helping Veronica, but I was curious. How far would they push? How much would they demand without offering anything in return? The answer, I soon learned, was quite far indeed. Over the next 3 weeks, their requests kept increasing. First, my mother asked if I could review Veronica's resume and provide feedback. I agreed and sent back a list of honest corrections, which Veronica ignored. Then my father called. He suggested Veronica could work as my assistant. I explained that directors didn't have personal assistants, and even if they did, the position would require project management experience. He dismissed my reasoning, saying Veronica just needed exposure to the corporate world and that I was overthinking it. He told me I should use my position to help family. The hypocrisy was astonishing. This was the same man who once mocked my degree, now asking me to use it for his benefit. I told him I'd consider it, though I knew I never would. Then Veronica called herself. Her tone was sharp and entitled. She accused me of sitting in my comfortable office while she struggled, claiming real sisters supported each other. She said I owed her because family came first. I asked what she'd done to support me when I was working 3 jobs to pay for college. She said that was different. When I asked how, she hung up. An hour later, my mother called again, this time to scold me for upsetting Veronica. She said I was being cruel. She claimed success had changed me. She said I used to be kind and family-oriented. I almost laughed. I had always valued family. They had simply never valued me. Still, I kept my voice calm. I explained that I was only being realistic about corporate hiring standards. My mother insisted that there were ways around the rules for people who mattered. I told her I wouldn't compromise my professional integrity. She said I was being dramatic, and the conversation ended badly. Afterward, I sat in my office looking out at the Seattle skyline and felt something shift inside me. They would never stop. They would never respect boundaries or acknowledge my work. They would keep demanding and expecting me to sacrifice my career for their convenience unless I gave them a reason not to. An idea began to take shape. It was risky, maybe even petty, but deeply satisfying. They wanted access to Cloud Tech. They wanted me to use my position to help Veronica. So what if I did exactly that, but not in the way they expected? That weekend, I began researching Cloud Tech, offered a well-structured internship program for career changers, 3-month paid roles designed to give people from non-technical backgrounds exposure to the tech industry. The program was rigorous, with only a 30% completion rate. Those who succeeded often landed entry-level positions. Those who didn't left knowing technology wasn't for them. It was perfect, competitive enough to seem legitimate, yet challenging enough to reveal Veronica's lack of commitment. I could recommend her in good faith, leaving the outcome entirely dependent on her effort. On Monday morning, I called my mother. I told her I'd been thinking about Veronica's situation and might have found something that could work. Her excitement was instant and overwhelming. I explained the internship program, its competitive nature, the requirements, and that I could recommend Veronica as a candidate. She asked if my recommendation guaranteed acceptance. I said it carried influence, but that Veronica would still need to interview and meet all requirements. She asked what those requirements were. I listed them. A bachelor's degree in any field, basic computer literacy, willingness to learn, and a full 3-month commitment. My mother assured me Veronica met all of them. I had doubts about the last two, but kept them to myself. Told her I'd submit the recommendation and that Veronica should prepare for the interview. She thanked me repeatedly, saying she knew I'd come through for the family. The irony didn't escape me. That afternoon, I submitted the referral. I was honest in my assessment, noting that Veronica had a business background and was exploring a transition into tech. Disclosed that she was my sister for full transparency. The program coordinator, a kind man named Trevor, thanked me and said they'd contact her to arrange an interview. Veronica's interview was scheduled for the following week. My mother called twice asking what Veronica should say. I told her to be herself and show enthusiasm for learning. In truth, the interviews assessed motivation and coachability traits Veronica had never excelled at. They valued honesty about what candidates didn't know and a genuine eagerness to grow. The interview lasted 30 minutes. Right after, Veronica called me, breathless with excitement. She said it had gone perfectly. She said they loved her. She said she was sure she'd get the position. I congratulated her and said, "We'll see." The acceptance email arrived 3 days later. Veronica was in. Her internship would begin the first week of September. It paid $25 an hour for 40 hours per week. She would join a rotation program, spending time with different teams to learn various aspects of cloud technology. My family was thrilled. My mother called several times to thank me. My father even sent a rare text saying I had done the right thing. Veronica announced her new opportunity on social media, describing it in a way that made it sound more prestigious than an internship really was. I watched with quiet amusement. They believed I had finally given in, that I had chosen family over pride. They had no idea what was actually about to unfold. The internship program had been built by people who understood that technology demanded commitment, problem-solving skills, and humility. The first week focused on orientation, introducing interns to cloud computing, company culture, and expectations. The second week placed them with their first team rotation. By the third week, interns were expected to make real contributions. Veronica lasted exactly 11 days. I didn't interfere. I didn't check on her or speak with her supervisors. I wanted her results to come entirely from her own effort, but I heard things anyway. Cloud tech wasn't that large, and word traveled quickly, especially when the intern was related to a director. The first concerns appeared during orientation. Veronica arrived late twice, blaming traffic even though she lived only 20 minutes away. She spent much of her time on her phone during training sessions. She questioned whether the lectures were necessary, insisting she already understood business. Kesha, the orientation leader, a patient and organized woman, noted everything in her report. Veronica's first rotation was with the infrastructure team, responsible for maintaining servers and ensuring system reliability. It was detailed, technical work that required patience and a willingness to learn. She was assigned to shadow David, a senior engineer known for being both thorough and kind to new interns. David did his best. I heard about it from Patricia, who heard it from David's manager. He explained everything clearly, answered questions without judgment, and gave Veronica simple tasks to help her build confidence. Her response was dismissive. She said the work was boring and not creative enough. She didn't see the point of learning about servers, saying she was more of a people person. David suggested she might enjoy the client relations team more. Veronica liked that idea. She was transferred after only 4 days in infrastructure. The client relations team managed existing customers, resolved issues, and identified new opportunities. It required both technical understanding and strong communication skills. Veronica lasted 3 days there. Angela, the client relations manager, was less forgiving than David. When Veronica arrived 30 minutes late on her first day, Angela noted it. When Veronica checked her email during a client call, Angela confronted her directly. When Veronica suggested she should handle social media instead of technical support, Angela scheduled a meeting with Trevor, the internship coordinator. Trevor later came to see me himself. He looked uneasy, sitting across my desk with Veronica's evaluation file. He said he wanted to give me a professional courtesy since Veronica was my sister. He explained that the program wasn't working out, listing issues like poor attendance, lack of engagement, refusal to learn technical skills, and unprofessional behavior during client interactions. I asked what the next step would be. Trevor said they'd hold one final meeting with Veronica, laying out expectations and consequences. If she couldn't meet those expectations, she'd be dismissed from the program. He apologized for the situation. I told him there was no need to apologize. I appreciated that the program had given her a fair chance and that any outcome should be based on her own actions. Trevor seemed relieved, thanked me for understanding, and left. I sat alone in my office afterward, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I had known this would happen, perhaps even counted on it. Still, watching someone fail in such a predictable way carried a certain heaviness. The final meeting took place the next morning. Trevor and Angela met with Veronica to review her performance. They were direct. She needed to arrive on time, engage with the training, and show respect for the learning process. If she couldn't do these things, her internship would end. Veronica called me during lunch, angry and defensive. She claimed the team was being unfair, that the work was beneath her, that they were targeting her for not being a computer nerd. She demanded I step in and make them back off. I asked if she had been on time. Silence. I asked if she had paid attention during training. She said it was boring. I asked if she had tried learning from her mentors. She said they didn't understand her strengths. I told her the internship required certain standards, and it was her choice whether to meet them. She accused me of not being on her side. I told her I was simply being honest. She hung up. She lasted 2 more days. On the 13th day of her internship, Veronica arrived 45 minutes late, offered no apology, and spent the morning loudly, complaining that technical work wasn't for everyone. Angela dismissed her before lunch. The termination was handled professionally and documented. Veronica was paid for her time and escorted out by security, standard procedure for all departing employees. I was in a meeting when it happened. An hour later, my mother called, furious, shouting. She said I had sabotaged Veronica. She said I had set her up to fail, that I had embarrassed the family. I let her vent for a few minutes before replying. I told her I had recommended Veronica for a legitimate internship program. I explained that she'd received the same orientation and support as every other intern. Her dismissal, I said, was based on her own conduct, documented by multiple supervisors. My mother said I should have protected her. I asked why Veronica needed protection from basic professional expectations. She called me ungrateful. She said that after everything they'd done for me, I owed them more. I asked what exactly they had done. Had they come to my graduation? Had they congratulated me on my job offer? Had they ever supported my career before they wanted something from it? There was a long silence. Then my mother said, that was different. I asked how. She said I was being vindictive and bringing up old grievances. I told her I was simply being honest about a pattern that had existed my entire life. My father joined the call. His tone was cold, authoritative. He said I had disappointed them. That family should help one another succeed, not tear each other down. He accused me of putting Veronica in a position where she was bound to fail. I told him that wasn't true. I had offered her an opportunity that hundreds of qualified candidates competed for. What she did with it was her choice. He said I was splitting hairs. He argued that I knew Veronica wasn't technical and should have found her. Something more suitable? I told him there was nothing more suitable at a tech company for someone with no interest or skills in technology. He said I could have created something. I asked if he meant I should have invented a fake role at a company where I was still building credibility. He said I was being difficult. I said I was being professional. He told me professionalism without loyalty meant nothing. I replied that loyalty without respect was meaningless. He told me not to come home for Sunday dinner until I was ready to apologize. I said that wouldn't be an issue. I hadn't been invited in 6 months anyway. Then I hung up. I sat in my office, hands slightly trembling. I had just severed ties with my entire family. They would tell anyone who'd listen that I was selfish, that I'd abandoned my sister, that success had made me cruel. They'd cast themselves as victims and me as the villain. Part of me felt uneasy about it, but a larger part felt free. An hour later, Patricia knocked on my door. She had heard about Veronica's dismissal and came to check in. I assured her I was fine. She said she admired how I handled the situation, keeping professional boundaries even when it was personally painful. She said that kind of integrity was rare and valuable. Her words meant more than any approval I'd ever hoped to get from my parents. The following weeks were tense. My phone filled with messages from extended family, people I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly concerned about family unity. My aunt said I should have been more patient with Veronica. My uncle said young people needed more support these days. My cousin said I was lucky to be smart and should help those who weren't. I blocked most of them. I focused on my work, on my team, and on building something that mattered. Cloud tech was thriving. My department was exceeding every target. I was hiring strong talent, building systems to scale with the company's growth. I was good at this. I belonged here. Then, in early October, something unexpected happened. I met with a potential client, a major renewable energy company planning to revamp its data infrastructure. The CEO, Victoria, was sharp and direct. We spent 2 hours discussing their goals and our capabilities. The meeting went well. She seemed genuinely impressed by our approach and my team's expertise. As we wrapped up, Victoria mentioned she had heard good things about cloud tech from several sources. One of them, she said, was a friend in the pharmaceutical industry, Diane, the CTO from my first major project. Victoria said Diane had spoken highly of my work and recommended that she request me by name if she ever needed implementation support. Warmth spread through my chest. This was what real professional respect looked like. People who valued your work and advocated for you because of your merit. People who recognized your ability and wanted others to benefit from it. Victoria's company signed with us the following week. The contract was worth $3.2 million over 2 years, the largest deal my department had ever closed. The executive team was thrilled. Patricia recommended me for a bonus, and I received a company-wide recognition email from the CEO. My parents never acknowledged it. I hadn't expected them to. But something unexpected did happen. Veronica reached out, not through a call or text, but a LinkedIn message. It was professional, almost formal. She apologized for how things had ended at Cloud Tech. She said she hadn't been ready for that environment and had reacted poorly. She hoped we could move past it. I stared at the message for a while. It sounded sincere, but I'd learned to be cautious about my family's motives. I replied carefully, thanking her for reaching out and wishing her success in finding a role that matched her strengths. I kept it brief and neutral. She replied right away. She said she was now working at my father's construction company, managing scheduling and client communications. It was going well, she said. She realized she was better suited to the family business than to tech. I congratulated her and left it there. I didn't fully trust this new maturity, but I also didn't have the energy to question it. I had my own life to manage. November brought new challenges. Cloud tech was expanding fast, and my department was struggling to keep up with demand. We needed more people, stronger systems, and clearer strategies. I spent long hours interviewing candidates, redesigning workflows, and presenting growth plans to executives. It was exhausting, but also energizing. I was building something from the ground up, structures that would support hundreds of future projects. I was mentoring new directors and shaping company culture. At 26, I was leading a department generating tens of millions in revenue. My parents still didn't call. Veronica stopped messaging. The silence from my family was complete. Sometimes I missed them, missed the idea of what a family should be. But mostly, I felt relieved. I had spent so much of my life trying to earn their approval that I never stopped to ask whether their approval was even worth having. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called. I almost ignored the call, but something made me answer. Her voice sounded different, softer, smaller. She said she wanted to invite me to Thanksgiving dinner. that it had been too long since we were all together. She talked about how important family was, especially during the holidays. I waited for the hidden motive, the favor, the guilt, the criticism. But it didn't come. She simply asked if I would join them. I told her I'd think about it. After the call, I sat with the decision for days. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect the boundaries I had finally learned to hold. Another part wondered if maybe something had changed, if they had grown or learned anything from the distance. Eventually, I decided to go. Not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to see for myself if things were truly different. I went in with clear eyes and realistic expectations. No hope for miracles or apologies, just observation. Thanksgiving dinner was at my parents' house in Portland, the same dining room where I had shared countless meals feeling invisible. I arrived right on time, bringing a bottle of wine I'd chosen carefully. My mother greeted me with a smile that seemed genuine, though I stayed cautious. The house looked the same. Family photos filled the hallway, and I noticed something I had always known but never let myself face fully. I appeared in far fewer pictures than Veronica. When I was in the photos, they were group shots, me at the edge, easy to crop out. Veronica, on the other hand, was always centered, smiling, the favorite. Looking at them now, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just quiet recognition. Dinner began pleasantly enough. My father asked about work in vague terms, not really listening. Veronica talked about her position at the construction company, how she was learning the business, helping to modernize their client systems. My mother praised her repeatedly, saying how nice it was to have her nearby, part of the family business. I ate my turkey and sweet potatoes and waited. There had to be a reason for this sudden reunion. My family never did anything without purpose. When dessert came, pumpkin pie and coffee, my mother opened a second bottle of wine. Then my father cleared his throat, that familiar sign of an important announcement. I set my fork down. He said they had been reflecting lately. He said family mattered and they regretted how things had gone these past months. He said they wanted to move forward, to rebuild. I nodded, waiting for the real reason. Then my mother spoke. They had a proposal. The construction company, she said, was doing well, expanding into commercial projects. They needed to modernize operations, bring in new systems, and upgrade infrastructure. They needed someone who understood both business and technology. They wanted to hire me. I sat still, processing. This wasn't reconciliation. It was recruitment. They hadn't invited me for connection. They needed my skills. My father went on to explain. I'd be director of operations and technology, overseeing new systems, learning the construction side, preparing to eventually co-lead the company with Veronica. He called it a family legacy, an opportunity to build something together. The pay would match my salary at Cloud Tech, with profit sharing and ownership stakes. Veronica jumped in, excited. She said it would be amazing to work together, that we could finally be a real team. She said the company needed fresh ideas and I was the perfect fit. My mother nodded, saying how wonderful it would be to have both daughters shaping the family's future. They all looked at me, clearly expecting a yes. It was obvious they had planned this carefully, timing the invitation and the offer for maximum emotional effect. They believed I'd feel touched, grateful, finally included. But they still didn't know me. I took a sip of wine, letting silence do its work. Then I asked a simple question. Why now? My father said they had realized family mattered more than pride. I asked why I hadn't mattered 6 months ago, or a year ago, or ever, until I had something they needed. The air in the room shifted. My mother said that was unfair. I asked which part. Then I listed the facts, calmly, without emotion. They had skipped my graduation, dismissed my first job offer, only called when they wanted me to help Veronica. When that failed, they blamed me and cut contact. And now that they needed technical expertise, I was family again. Veronica said I was being dramatic. I turned to her and asked if she remembered our last conversation, before her internship, when she told me I owed her because family came first. I asked if she remembered hanging up on me when I asked what she had ever done to support my education. I asked if she had ever noticed how one-sided this relationship had always been. She looked away. My father said I was stuck in the past. I told him the past was the only proof I had of their real priorities. My mother said people could change. I agreed and asked for evidence. My father's face started to turn red, a sign I knew well from childhood. He said I was being disrespectful. I said I was being honest. He told me to be grateful for the opportunity they were offering. I told him they should be grateful I had agreed to come to dinner. The conversation was unfolding exactly as I expected. They weren't interested in reconciliation. They wanted control. They wanted access to my skills, my network, and my success, while keeping the same dynamic where my worth remained purely functional. I stood up from the table. My mother asked where I was going. I told her I was leaving because this dinner had confirmed what I already knew. They didn't see me as a person with my own life and purpose. They saw me as a resource, useful when needed and disregarded when not. Veronica called me selfish. That word again, selfish. I had heard it countless times, always when I dared to prioritize myself or protect my boundaries. I turned to face her. I told her that selfishness means taking more than your share. Then I asked what I had taken from her. I paid for my own education while hers had been funded by our parents. I worked multiple jobs while she lived rent-free at home. I built my career through effort and persistence while she expected doors to open simply because of family ties. So, I asked how exactly was I being selfish? She had no answer. My father told me to sit down. I stayed standing. He warned that if I walked out, I was choosing career over family. I told him I was choosing respect over dysfunction. He said I would regret my decision. I replied that the only thing I regretted was wasting so many years seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. My mother began to cry. Tears that felt calculated, meant to shift blame. She said she didn't understand where all my anger was coming from. I told her it wasn't anger. It was clarity. I had finally stopped confusing obligation with love, stopped mistaking tolerance for acceptance. They had always preached that family supports one another, yet they had never applied that standard to themselves. I walked to the door. My father's voice followed sharply behind me. He said I was making a mistake, that I'd come crawling back once I realized I needed them. He said blood was thicker than water and that I couldn't run from family forever. I turned back one last time and told him he was right. Blood is thicker than water. But he was quoting it wrong. The full phrase is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means chosen bonds are stronger than biological ones. I had chosen cloud tech. I had chosen Patricia, my team, and the life I was building. I wasn't running from family. I was running toward people who genuinely valued me. Then I left. I drove back to Seattle through the dark, feeling lighter with every mile. I had gone to that dinner hoping for change, but received confirmation instead. They would never see me differently, because they didn't want to. They wanted a version of me that existed only to meet their needs. And when I refused to be that person, I became the villain in their story. I could live with that. I had spent years trying to be the daughter they wanted. Now I was ready to be the woman I actually was. The fallout came quickly and predictably. My mother called twice the next day. I didn't answer. My father sent a long email listing all the ways I had disappointed them, how I had wasted their time, their support, and how I'd understand one day. I deleted it without finishing. Veronica posted vague messages on social media about loyalty and betrayal. I blocked her accounts. Then the extended family started reaching out, this time more insistently. My aunt said I was tearing the family apart. I replied that I was simply refusing to hold together something that had never included me properly. My uncle said I'd regret burning bridges. I told him some bridges deserve to burn. My cousin said everyone makes mistakes and I should be more forgiving. I asked which mistakes of mine required forgiveness. No one had an answer. I threw myself into work. The renewable energy project had entered a critical phase. Victoria's team depended on us to complete the system migration before year-end. I coordinated across 5 technical teams, managed client communication daily, and solved problems as they arose. It was demanding, and exactly what I needed. Patricia noticed I was working even longer hours than usual. In mid-December, she pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I told her about Thanksgiving, the job offer, the confrontation, and the final break with my family. I expected sympathy or polite reassurance. Instead, Patricia shared a story. She told me that when she began her career 25 years earlier, her family wanted her to join their restaurant business. Her parents were immigrants who had sacrificed everything, and they expected their children to continue the family legacy. But Patricia had wanted to study computer science instead. Her family had been furious. They called her ungrateful and selfish, accused her of abandoning her heritage. She went ahead anyway. She put herself through school and built her own career. Yes, her family eventually came around, but it took years, and in those years of separation, she learned something vital. You can't live someone else's version of your life. She told me I had made the right choice. She said family that only values what you can give them isn't real family. And she assured me I was going to be fine. I believed her. Over the next few weeks, I felt the weight I had been carrying begin to lift. I stopped checking my phone constantly, waiting for messages from my parents. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations where I finally made them understand. I stopped hoping for a version of them that didn't exist. The renewable energy project was completed successfully on December 20th. Victoria sent a personal thank you email, praising the team's performance and specifically highlighting my leadership. The client referred us to 2 other companies within their industry. Our department closed the year exceeding revenue targets by 18%. The executive team rewarded me with a significant bonus and another promotion, Senior Director of Enterprise Solutions, a larger team, a bigger budget, and direct involvement in company strategy. At 26, I became the youngest senior director in Cloud Tech's history. The announcement went out company-wide 2 days before Christmas. I spent Christmas alone in my Seattle apartment, and it was peaceful. I cooked a nice dinner for myself, video called Julia and a few friends, watched movies, and finally finished a book I'd been meaning to read. I didn't miss the tension of family gatherings or the constant sense of judgment. Then, on December 28th, I received an unexpected LinkedIn message. It was from Diane, the CTO of the pharmaceutical company where I'd worked on my very first project. She said she'd been following my career and was impressed. Her company was looking for a vice president of technology implementation. Would I be interested in discussing it? I stared at the message in disbelief. A vice president role at a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company. It would be a huge leap, even beyond what I had already achieved. The position would oversee all technology projects across the enterprise, managing a team of over 50 people and reporting directly to the CIO. I replied that I'd be very interested in learning more. We scheduled a call for the first week of January. I didn't tell anyone at Cloud Tech, not even Patricia. I wanted to understand the opportunity before saying anything. The call with Diane lasted about 90 minutes. She was clear about what they needed: someone who could bridge technical and business perspectives, manage complex projects, lead large teams, and stay composed under executive pressure. She asked about my experience, leadership approach, and long-term goals. I answered honestly, drawing on everything I'd learned over the past 8 months. At the end of the call, Diane said she wanted to move forward with the formal interview process. It would involve several rounds, meetings with executives and presentations to leadership teams. It would take a few weeks. I thanked her and said I looked forward to it. When the call ended, I sat quietly in my office, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine excitement about the future. Not anxiety about proving myself. Not fear of letting anyone down. Just pure anticipation for what was ahead. The interview process was intense. I met with the CIO, the COO, and finally, the CEO. But I prepared presentations on technology strategy, implementation methods, and change management. They asked detailed questions about team leadership, scalability, and problem solving. Every person I met was sharp, professional, and genuinely interested in my vision. In early February, they made an offer, Vice President of Technology Implementation, a salary of $215,000, plus equity, performance bonuses, relocation support, full benefits, and executive perks. Start date, March 1st. I accepted immediately. Then I met with Patricia to give my notice. She took it with grace, congratulating me while admitting she'd miss working together. She said she'd always known I was meant for bigger things and offered to be a reference anytime. thanked her sincerely for recognizing my potential when even my own family couldn't. Last day at Cloud Tech was February 25th. Team threw a small farewell gathering in the conference room. We shared memories of projects we'd completed and challenges we'd overcome. Several team members said I'd been the best manager they'd ever worked for. Trevor, from the internship program, joked that at least one person from my family had benefited from my time at Cloud Tech, even if only briefly. Everyone laughed, including me. The Veronica situation had become something of an office legend, a story about professionalism and integrity under personal pressure. What had once been painful now stood as proof of character. Thought about my family on the drive to the pharmaceutical company headquarters. For my first day, I wondered if they knew about my new position. I hadn't told them. But word travels fast in professional circles. Maybe someone had mentioned it. I wondered if they felt any regret about how they'd treated me, or about the missed chance to truly know who I'd become. Then I stopped wondering. It didn't matter anymore. They'd made their choices, and I had made mine. I was building a life founded on merit, respect, and chosen relationships, surrounded by people who valued competence and integrity. I was shaping my own definition of success, one that had nothing to do with their approval. My first month as vice president was both challenging and rewarding. I inherited struggling projects and teams with low morale. I spent long days understanding systems, meeting stakeholders, and rebuilding trust. I implemented new processes, redesigned workflows, and coached managers on leadership principles. Gradually, things began to improve. Then in late March, I received an unexpected email from Veronica. It came to my personal inbox, not LinkedIn. The subject line read, "I'm sorry, I almost deleted it." Without opening, but curiosity won. The email was longer than I expected. Veronica told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking since Thanksgiving. She said she had finally started therapy and was beginning to work through her issues. She admitted she had treated me unfairly for most of our lives, that she had taken me for granted and resented me for succeeding in areas where she had struggled. She explained that our parents had always compared us, and instead of facing her insecurities, she had dismissed my achievements. Veronica said she didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know she now understood how unfair she had been. She hoped I was doing well and said she was genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. Read her email 3 times. It sounded sincere, more self-aware than anything she'd ever said before. But I also knew that words were easy, while change took effort. Therapy was a good start, but it didn't erase years of behavior, I replied briefly. I told her I appreciated her honesty and was glad she was working on herself. I wished her well, but I didn't offer reconciliation or suggest meeting. I simply acknowledged her message and left it there. Maybe someday we could rebuild some kind of relationship. Maybe not. Either way, I knew I would be fine. My parents never apologized. My father only reinforced his belief that I had betrayed them. My mother occasionally sent messages saying she missed me, but she never addressed what had really happened or why I had left. They told relatives I had chosen my career over family, casting themselves as the victims. Through mutual contacts, I heard that my father's construction company was still struggling to modernize. Without my expertise, they had fallen behind competitors with better technology. Eventually, they hired a consulting firm, paying 3 times what my salary would have cost, and the consultants implemented nearly the same systems I had once proposed. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had refused my help because I was family, yet paid strangers to do the same job. Meanwhile, my own career flourished. Within a year, I had transformed the technology implementation department at the pharmaceutical company. We completed a major digital transformation project that saved the company $12 million annually. I was promoted again to executive vice president, and with a corner office and a seat at the leadership table where company direction was decided. I bought a home, traveled internationally for work, and mentored young women entering the tech field. I built real friendships with colleagues who became like family. I started dating someone kind and supportive, someone who respected my ambitions. For the first time, I had a life that was completely my own. Looking back, I realized that real revenge hadn't come from Veronica's failed internship, the Thanksgiving confrontation, or my family's disappointment. The real revenge was in living, well, in creating a life of success and fulfillment that they could neither control nor claim. It was proving that their approval had never been required. They had underestimated my worth, and I had gone on to exceed every expectation anyway. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about elaborate plans or public humiliation. It's simply becoming so successful that the people who doubted you have to watch from a distance, knowing they could have been part of your story but chose not to be. My family had to live with the knowledge that they had rejected me when I needed them most, and I had thrived without their support. That in itself was enough of a consequence. Standing in my office, overlooking the city one spring afternoon, 5 years after that lonely graduation ceremony, I felt no anger, no resentment, just peace. My family had taught me something important, though not what they intended. They taught me I didn't need their validation to feel valuable. They taught me to define success on my own terms. They taught me that sometimes, the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. I had stopped chasing their approval and started earning my own, and that change had transformed everything.